Here is a comprehensive, in-depth review of Plato, The Last Days of Socrates, designed to be both detailed and insightful. This review will cover the structure, themes, philosophical significance, literary merit, translation quality, and enduring relevance of the work, as well as offer a nuanced critique of each of the four dialogues, Euthyphro, Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, that make up this classic volume. Plato, The Last Days of Socrates, Penguin Classics. A comprehensive review. Introduction. Few works in Western philosophy have been as enduringly influential, as rigorously analyzed, and as emotionally stirring as Plato's account of the trial and execution of Socrates. The Last Days of Socrates, a Penguin Classics edition, gathers together four of Plato's most profound early dialogues, Euthyphro, Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, each centered around the historical figure of Socrates during the final days leading up to his execution in 399 BCE. This collection is not only a foundational text for students of philosophy but also a literary masterpiece. Through the vivid dramatization of Socratic conversation, Plato brings to life fundamental questions of ethics, piety, justice, the nature of the soul, and the meaning of philosophical inquiry itself. The Penguin Classics edition, typically rendered in lucid and accessible English, often by the acclaimed translator Euthyphro, with introductions and notes by Harold Tarrant or Christopher Rowe, depending on edition, offers both scholars and general readers an invaluable portal into the ancient world of Athens at a pivotal moment in its intellectual history. This review aims to provide a thorough exploration of The Last Days of Socrates, as presented in the Penguin Classics edition, examining not only the content and themes of the dialogues but also the translation, editorial apparatus, philosophical context, and the relevance of the text for modern readers. We will proceed by first considering the historical and philosophical context of Socrates' death, then analyzing each dialogue in detail, before moving on to broader thematic discussions, translation considerations, and the book's impact on the philosophical canon. 1. Historical and philosophical context. 1.1. Socrates, the man and his mission. Socrates stands at the fountainhead of Western philosophy. Unlike earlier thinkers, presocratics such as Thales, Anaximander, or Heraclitus, Socrates left no writings of his own. His life and thought are known through the works of his students, especially Plato and Xenophon. What emerges from these accounts is the image of a man utterly devoted to the examined life, a relentless questioner whose method of elenchus, refutation through dialogue, sought to expose contradictions and stimulate deeper thinking. Living during the turbulent years of late 5th century BCE Athens, Socrates witnessed the devastation of the Peloponnesian War, the fall of the Athenian democracy, and the brief tyranny of the 30. His philosophical mission, as he presents it, was divinely inspired: to awaken Athenians from intellectual complacency, challenge conventional wisdom, and cultivate virtue through reason. 1.2. The trial and execution. In 399 BCE, Socrates was brought to trial on charges of impiety, not believing in the gods of the city, and corrupting the youth. The political context is vital. Athens, still reeling from internal strife and the humiliation of defeat by Sparta, was looking for scapegoats. Socrates, with his public questioning of traditional values and associations with controversial figures, was a convenient target. He was found guilty and sentenced to drink hemlock. The events from his indictment through to his death are recounted in the dialogues collected in The Last Days of Socrates, making this volume both a record of an epical historical moment and a profound meditation on the philosophical life. 2. Structure of the Penguin Classics edition. The Penguin Classics edition groups together four Platonic dialogues. 1. Euthyphro. Set outside the Athenian law courts, this dialogue features Socrates discussing the nature of piety with Euthyphro as he awaits his own trial. 2. Apology. Plato's version of Socrates' defense speech at his trial. 3. Crito. Taking place in Socrates' prison cell, where his friend Crito urges him to escape his impending execution. 4. Phaedo. The dramatic account of Socrates' final hours and his philosophical arguments for the immortality of the soul. Each dialogue reveals a different facet of Socrates' character and thought, and together they form a coherent philosophical and literary arc. 3. Dialogue analysis. 3.1. Euthyphro. 3.1.1. Summary. The Euthyphro is set just before Socrates' trial. Socrates encounters Euthyphro outside the king Archon's court, where the latter is prosecuting his own father for murder, a shocking act in the context of Greek society. Socrates, himself indicted for impiety, seizes the opportunity to question Euthyphro about the nature of piety or holiness. 3.1.2. Analysis. At the heart of the dialogue is the famous Euthyphro dilemma. Is what is pious loved by the gods because it is pious, or is it pious because it is loved by the gods? This dilemma exposes deep problems in divine command theories of ethics and has provided centuries of philosophers with food for thought. The dialogue is exemplary of the Socratic method. Socrates asks probing questions, exposing Euthyphro's lack of clear understanding. Euthyphro offers several definitions of piety, each of which Socrates shows to be inadequate or circular. The dialogue ends inconclusively, with Euthyphro hastily departing, unable to defend his claims. 3.1.3. Literary and philosophical merit. Euthyphro is a short but dense dialogue, rich in irony and dramatic tension. Socrates' humility and relentless pursuit of clarity are on display, as is his ability to remain calm and rational even when facing mortal danger. The dialogue's open-endedness invites readers to continue the philosophical inquiry themselves. 3.2. Apology. 3.2.1. Summary. The apology is not an apology in the modern sense, but a defense speech. Socrates addresses the court, responding to both old and new accusations, that he is a sophist, a corrupter of youth, and an atheist. He cross-examines his accusers, explains his mission, and ultimately accepts his fate. 3.2.2. Analysis. Apology is arguably the most famous of Plato's dialogues and serves as a dramatic centerpiece of this volume. Socrates' speech is passionate, witty, and unyielding. He refuses to pander to the jury, instead asserting that he would rather die than give up philosophy. His comparison of himself to a gadfly, an irritant necessary for the health of the city, remains a powerful metaphor for the philosopher's social function. Socrates' defense rests on the claim that he has been guided by a divine sign, the daemonion, and that his questioning is a service to both gods and city. He deftly exposes the ignorance of his accusers and the prejudice that surrounds him. When found guilty, he proposes as his punishment that he be rewarded with free meals for life, a gesture both comic and profound. 3.2.3. Literary and philosophical merit. The Apology is a literary tour de force, combining drama, irony, and philosophical depth. Socrates' fearlessness in the face of death, his commitment to the examined life, and his critique of Athenian society have inspired generations. The dialogue is also a powerful meditation on civic duty, conscience, and the limits of democratic judgment. 3.3. Crito. 3.3.1. Summary. Set in Socrates' prison cell, Crito presents a conversation between Socrates and his wealthy friend Crito, who has arranged a plan for Socrates to escape. Crito urges Socrates to flee, citing the shame that would fall upon his friends and the injustice of the verdict. 3.3.2. Analysis. Socrates, however, turns the discussion to the nature of justice and obligation. He argues that it would be wrong to repay injustice with injustice, and that he has a duty to obey the laws of Athens, even if they have wronged him. Socrates personifies the laws of Athens, who argue that to break the law would undermine the city itself. This dialogue explores the conflict between personal loyalty and civic duty, between natural law and positive law. Socrates' argument for the sanctity of law, even in the face of injustice, remains controversial and has been variously interpreted as both a defense of civil disobedience and of legal positivism. 3.3.3. Literary and philosophical merit. Crito is a model of philosophical reasoning. The dialogue's structure, Crito's emotional pleas followed by Socrates' calm, logical analysis, highlights Socrates' unwavering commitment to principle. The personification of the laws adds a dramatic and almost mythic dimension to the argument. 3.4. Phaedo. 3.4.1. Summary. Phaedo takes place on the day of Socrates' death. Socrates' friends gather to witness his final hours. The dialogue is narrated by Phaedo, who describes Socrates' composure, his philosophical discussions, and his final moments as he drinks the hemlock. The main philosophical theme is the immortality of the soul. Socrates presents several arguments. The cyclical argument, opposites come from opposites, the theory of recollection, learning is remembering, the affinity argument, soul is akin to the divine and immortal, and the argument from forms, true knowledge implies the existence of the soul beyond the body. 3.4.2 Analysis. Phaedo is both a philosophical treatise and a poignant drama. Socrates' serenity in the face of death is moving. His arguments, while sometimes speculative, are presented with clarity and rigor. The dialogue also explores the dangers of misology, hatred of reason, the nature of philosophy as a preparation for death, and the ethical implications of belief in an afterlife. 3.4.3 Literary and philosophical merit. Phaedo is often considered one of Plato's greatest works. Its structure, dialogue nested within dialogue, creates a sense of immediacy and intimacy. The emotional tone is one of sorrow and admiration, as Socrates' friends struggle to accept his passing. The philosophical arguments, while open to debate, have exercised a profound influence on subsequent thought about the soul, mortality, and the meaning of philosophical inquiry. 4. Overarching themes and philosophical significance. 4.1 The examined life. Central to all four dialogues is Socrates' assertion that the unexamined life is not worth living. Philosophy, for Socrates, is not an academic exercise but a way of life. The dialogues dramatize the costs and rewards of relentless questioning, the courage to face ignorance, and the willingness to die for one's beliefs. 4.2 Justice, law, and civic responsibility. The dialogues probe the meaning of justice. Is it always right to obey the law? When, if ever, is civil disobedience justified? Socrates' arguments have informed debates about the rule of law, the relationship between individual and state, and the foundations of political obligation. 4.3 Piety and the divine. Euthyphro's challenge to divine command ethics, Socrates' own claims of divine guidance, and the arguments for the soul's immortality in Phaedo all reveal a complex relationship between philosophy and religion. Socrates is at once deeply pious and radically critical of traditional religious beliefs. 4.4 Death and immortality. Through his calm acceptance of death and his arguments for the soul's immortality, Socrates offers a vision of philosophy as preparation for dying well. The dialogues invite readers to consider their own attitudes toward mortality and the possibility of life after death. 5. Translation and editorial apparatus. The Penguin Classics edition is widely praised for its clarity, accuracy, and readability. The translation avoids both archaic language and excessive modernism, making the text accessible without sacrificing philosophical precision. The introductions and notes contextualize the dialogues, explain key terms, and offer guidance for interpretation. The editorial apparatus, footnotes, glossary, and appendices, serves both novice and advanced readers. The introduction situates the dialogues within Plato's oeuvre and the history of philosophy. The notes clarify references to Athenian law, religious practices, and philosophical concepts. 6. Literary qualities. Plato is not only a philosopher but also a brilliant dramatist. The dialogues are replete with irony, humor, pathos, and rhetorical skill. Socrates emerges as a vivid character, witty, ironic, compassionate, and unflinching. The supporting characters, Euthyphro's self-satisfaction, Meletus' obtuseness, Crito's loyalty, Phaedo's devotion, add color and depth. The settings, Athenian law courts, a prison cell, the calm before death, heighten the dramatic tension. Plato's skillful use of dialogue, narrative framing, and philosophical argument make these works masterpieces of world literature. 7. Enduring relevance. The Last Days of Socrates remains urgent and relevant. Its themes, freedom of thought, the conflict between individual conscience and social norms, the search for truth, the meaning of justice, are as pressing today as they were in ancient Athens. Socrates' willingness to die for his beliefs has inspired countless thinkers, activists, and ordinary people. The dialogues also raise difficult questions with no easy answers. What is the role of the philosopher in society? How should we respond to injustice? Can reason lead to truth? What does it mean to die well? These questions continue to animate philosophical inquiry and public debate. 8. Critique and limitations. While the last days of Socrates is justly celebrated, it is not without limitations. The dialogues present only Plato's version of Socrates. Other accounts, such as Xenophon's, differ in tone and emphasis. Some readers may find Socrates' arguments for immortality unconvincing, or his commitment to obeying unjust laws problematic. Plato's portrayal of Athenian democracy is ambivalent, and his later works would develop more radical critiques. Moreover, the dialogues are products of their time, reflecting Athenian social, religious, and political norms that may be alien to modern readers. 9. Conclusion. The Last Days of Socrates is both a philosophical classic and a literary masterpiece. The Penguin Classics edition offers a superb introduction to Plato's thought and to the enduring mystery and power of Socrates. Through its vivid dialogues, it invites readers to reflect on life's deepest questions about virtue, justice, death, and the search for truth. Reading these dialogues is an encounter not only with one of history's greatest minds but also with the perennial challenges of human existence. Socrates' example, as dramatized by Plato, continues to inspire courage, humility, and the relentless pursuit of wisdom. 10. Further reading and recommendations. For readers inspired by The Last Days of Socrates, further exploration of Plato's dialogues is highly recommended. Republic, Phaedrus, Symposium, and Meno offer deeper insights into Plato's metaphysics, ethics, and political philosophy. Comparing Plato's Socrates with Xenophon's in Memorabilia and Apology can also enrich one's understanding. For modern philosophical discussions of the themes raised, works by thinkers such as Hannah Arendt, Responsibility and Judgment, Leo Strauss, The City and Man, and Martha Nussbaum, The Therapy of Desire, are invaluable. 11. Final thoughts. To read The Last Days of Socrates is to stand at the crossroads of philosophy, literature, and history. The dialogues challenge, provoke, and ultimately ennoble. Whether one agrees with Socrates or not, his commitment to reason, integrity, and the life of inquiry remains a beacon for all who seek to live thoughtfully and courageously.